Your boss just made you feel stupid, but you can't figure out what they actually said. Your ex twisted your words until you apologized for something you didn't do. Your parent made you feel guilty for having boundaries, but you can't explain why. You know something happened. You know you lost, but you have no idea how. Right now, someone is reshaping your reality, and you don't even know it's happening. They're using your own thoughts against you, turning your logic into quicksand, making you doubt what you know to be true. And the most terrifying part? You're helping them do it. You're participating in your own psychological destruction, and you don't even realize you're under attack. What if I told you that 90% of your arguments aren't actually about what you think they're about? What if most conversations are psychological warfare disguised as civil discussion? What if your rational mind has been hacked by people who've mastered an invisible art that you didn't even know existed? Meet Felix, a 28-year-old who thought he was losing his mind. Every conversation left him confused, defeated, questioning his own sanity. His boss made him feel incompetent with questions that seemed innocent. His ex-girlfriend turned his attempts at logic into evidence of his cruelty. His mother made his reasonable requests sound selfish and ungrateful. Felix wasn't going crazy. He was being systematically psychologically dismantled by masters of what Arthur Schopenhauer called the art of being right, the most dangerous knowledge ever compiled about human manipulation. In this epic video, I'm going to show you the invisible weapons being used against your mind every single day. You'll discover that what you thought was normal disagreement is actually sophisticated mental warfare. You'll learn to see the 38 psychological tricks that turn your own intelligence against you. And most importantly, you'll gain the same deadly knowledge that Schopenhauer used to become psychologically untouchable. This isn't about winning arguments. This is about psychological survival. This is about recognizing when someone is trying to colonize your mind and knowing exactly how to stop them. What I'm about to reveal will forever change how you see every conversation, every debate, every interaction where someone wants to control you. You'll never be intellectually helpless again. Stay until the end, because I'll show you Schopenhauer's most ruthless technique for turning any manipulator's weapons against them. By the time this video ends, you'll possess the same dangerous knowledge that separates the psychologically free from the mentally enslaved. Felix sits in his boss's office, palms sweating. He's prepared for this meeting. He has facts, figures, and logic on his side. His proposal to restructure the marketing budget will save the company $50,000 and increase efficiency by 30%. The data is crystal clear. So Felix, his boss begins with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. You're saying that everyone who came before you was wrong? That our entire marketing strategy has been a failure? Within 30 seconds, Felix finds himself defending his character rather than presenting his proposal. No, that's not what I said at all. But that's what you're implying, isn't it? Are you saying I don't know how to run this department? Arthur Schopenhauer observed that most people believe arguments are about finding truth, about two rational minds coming together to solve problems through logic and evidence. This is the greatest delusion of civilized society. Schopenhauer discovered that in reality, most arguments aren't about truth at all. They're about dominance. They're about one person's ego crushing another's will to resist. In his controversial work, The Art of Being Right, he exposed the 38 underhanded tricks people use to win arguments regardless of whether they're actually correct. Felix's boss isn't interested in the marketing budget. He's engaged in what Schopenhauer called heuristic dialectic. The art of being right at all costs, even when you're wrong. The boss has just deployed trick number 1, extension, taking Felix's specific proposal and extending it to an absurd generalization about Felix's entire attitude toward the company. "I think there might be a misunderstanding," Felix stammers, already losing ground. "I just want to present the data." "Data," the boss interrupts. "You know what I see when I look at your data. I see someone who doesn't understand that business is about relationships, not spreadsheets. Are you really going to sit there and tell me that numbers matter more than people?" Now the boss has deployed trick number 2, homonymy, using the same word to mean different things. Felix said data, meaning objective analysis, but the boss redefined it as cold, inhuman number crunching that ignores people. Felix feels the familiar frustration rising. He knows he's being manipulated, but he can't see how. He can't name what's happening to him, and that's exactly how these psychological predators prefer it. But here's where it gets dangerous. That evening, Felix sits in his car in the company parking garage, hands gripping the steering wheel. The meeting replays in his mind like a horror movie he can't turn off. Somehow, his bulletproof proposal had been twisted into an attack on company culture. His logical arguments had been reframed as arrogance. His preparation had been weaponized against him. He pulls out his phone and starts researching. How to win arguments, debate techniques, logic and reasoning. The search results are filled with feel-good advice about active listening and finding common ground. But Felix knows something darker is at play here. Then he finds it. Arthur Schopenhauer's The Art of Being Right. As he reads, a chill runs down his spine. Schopenhauer's most controversial insight was that human beings are fundamentally driven not by reason, but by will. The blind, irrational force that demands to dominate and survive at all costs. When someone's ego is threatened, when their position of power is challenged, reason goes out the window. What remains is pure psychological warfare. All truth passes through 3 stages, Schopenhauer wrote. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. But most people never reach stage 3 because they're destroyed in stages 1 and 2 by masters of heuristic dialectic. Felix realizes his boss isn't just disagreeable, he's a psychological predator who has perfected the art of intellectual destruction. Every question that seemed like genuine curiosity was actually a trap. Every reframe that seemed like clarification was actually misdirection. The boss had used trick number 16, drawing conclusions, taking Felix's proposal and drawing extreme conclusions that Felix never intended. So you think relationships don't matter in business? The boss had also deployed trick number 30, authority, positioning himself as the wise, experienced leader who understands the real world, while Felix was just a naive number cruncher. But the most insidious trick was trick number 38, becoming personal. The moment the boss made it about Felix's character rather than his proposal. Schopenhauer warned that this is the nuclear option of heuristic dialectic. When someone attacks your person rather than your position, they've revealed their complete intellectual bankruptcy. Felix keeps reading, and each page reveals another layer of manipulation he's experienced but never recognized. The ex-girlfriend who would say, "You always," when discussing specific incidents. The colleague who would respond to Felix's ideas with, "Well, some people might think," before demolishing a position Felix never took. The friend who would ask, "Don't you think it's a little selfish to," whenever Felix set boundaries. They were all using Schopenhauer's tricks. They were all playing the same invisible game. Schopenhauer had mapped the entire battlefield of human manipulation, cataloging each weapon with scientific precision. He understood that most people are completely defenseless against these attacks because they don't even know they're under attack. They think they're having conversations when they're actually being psychologically dismantled. The majority of men are not capable of thinking, but only of believing, Schopenhauer observed. And those who would control others know exactly how to exploit this weakness. Felix feels sick. How many times had he been manipulated? How many decisions had he made not based on his own reasoning, but because someone had twisted his thoughts into knots? How many opportunities had he lost because he couldn't defend his ideas against these psychological attacks? Felix can't sleep. For 3 days, he's been seeing the matrix, the invisible web of manipulation that surrounds every human interaction. It's like someone gave him X-ray vision into the human psyche, and what he sees is terrifying. At the coffee shop, he watches a couple argue. The woman says, "You never listen to me." The man responds, "That's not true. Just yesterday And she cuts him off. "See? You're doing it right now." Felix recognizes it immediately. Schopenhauer's trick number 5, false premises. She's assumed her conclusion, that he never listens, and used his attempt to defend himself as proof of her premise. On the news, a politician deflects a question about his policies by saying, "My opponent wants to take us back to the Dark Ages." Trick number 1, extension. Taking a specific policy disagreement and extending it to an apocalyptic scenario. In The Art of Being Right, Schopenhauer explained that human society operates on a foundation of intellectual dishonesty. We're not taught to think. We're taught to win. We're not rewarded for truth. We're rewarded for dominance. The entire social system is built on the manipulation of perception rather than the pursuit of reality. Felix realizes that his education never prepared him for this. School taught him facts and logic, but nobody taught him that most people don't care about facts and logic. They care about feeling superior, maintaining their worldview, and protecting their ego at all costs. Schopenhauer identified the core mechanism. When someone's beliefs are threatened, their rational mind shuts down and their heuristic mind takes over. They stop trying to understand and start trying to destroy. They become intellectual predators, using every psychological trick in the book to make their opponent surrender. The most sophisticated manipulators don't even realize they're doing it. They've internalized these patterns so deeply that they automatically deploy them whenever they feel threatened. They've become walking psychological weapons, leaving a trail of confused, defeated people in their wake. Felix thinks about his childhood. His father, who would respond to any criticism with, "After everything I've done for you." Trick number 25, faulty analogy, making the conversation about gratitude instead of the actual issue. His mother, who would say, "You're just like your father," whenever Felix disagreed with her. Trick number 38, becoming personal, attacking character instead of addressing the point. He thinks about his teachers, who would respond to students' questions with, "That's not what we're discussing right now." Trick number 14, requiring premature conclusions, shutting down inquiry to maintain authority. His coaches, who would say, "Winners don't make excuses," when players pointed out unfair treatment. Trick number 27, reframe the context, changing what the conversation is about. The manipulation starts early and runs deep. By adulthood, most people are either skilled manipulators or conditioned victims. They've never experienced what Schopenhauer called honest dialectic, the rare and beautiful process where two minds genuinely collaborate to discover truth. Felix feels like he's been living in a psychological prison his entire life, and he's only now seeing the bars. Every relationship, every conversation, every interaction has been distorted by these hidden power games. He's been playing checkers while everyone else was playing chess, and he didn't even know chess existed. But the worst part? Felix realizes he's not innocent. He scrolls through his text messages and sees his own manipulation tactics. The time he told his ex, "You're being emotional," when she raised valid concerns. Trick number 38, undermining her rationality. The time he said, "I'm just trying to help," when she called out his controlling behavior. Trick number 29, diversion, making it about his good intentions instead of his impact. Schopenhauer was right. We're all infected with this psychological virus. We learned it from our parents, our teachers, our culture. We use it automatically, unconsciously, whenever our ego feels threatened. We're both perpetrator and victim in an endless cycle of intellectual warfare. The system is designed to keep people confused, defensive, and intellectually helpless. Those who master heuristic dialectic rise to positions of power, where they can manipulate entire populations. Those who remain honest and logical get crushed by those who've weaponized their minds. But here's where it gets dangerous. Felix stares at his reflection in the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m., and for the first time in his life, he sees himself clearly. Not the image he's constructed, not the story he tells himself, but the raw truth of what he's become. A psychological prisoner who doesn't even know he's in a cage. The revelation hits him like a sledgehammer. He's not just a victim of manipulation. He's an active participant in his own mental enslavement. Every time someone used heuristic tricks against him, instead of recognizing the manipulation, he internalized the defeat. He began to doubt his own perceptions, his own logic, his own reality. His ex-girlfriend, Sarah, comes to pick up their daughter, Emma. The custody exchange that used to be simple has become a weekly psychological battlefield. Sarah arrives 20 minutes late, as always. "Sorry, traffic was crazy," she says, not looking sorry at all. Felix has learned not to challenge this. The last time he pointed out her chronic lateness, she deployed a devastating combination of tricks. "You're being controlling again." Trick number 38, personal attack. Emma doesn't need to see her father being so rigid. Trick number 12, bringing in irrelevant consequences. And, "I'm doing the best I can as a single mother." Trick number 25, faulty analogy. Making it about her struggles instead of basic respect for time. Schopenhauer warned that the most dangerous trap in heuristic dialectic isn't falling for the tricks. It's learning to avoid conflict by surrendering your truth before the battle even begins. Felix has become so conditioned to psychological defeat that he now censors himself, anticipating the manipulation and backing down preemptively. "Daddy, why do you always look sad when Mommy comes?" Emma asks innocently. Felix's heart breaks. His 6-year-old daughter is already learning that normal human interactions involve one person's emotional state being weaponized against another. She's watching him model psychological submission, teaching her that this is how relationships work. At work, the pattern continues. Felix has a brilliant idea for a new campaign, but before he even presents it, his mind runs through all the ways his boss will twist it. He imagines the smirk, the loaded questions, the subtle character assassinations. So he says nothing. He keeps his idea locked away, adding it to the growing graveyard of thoughts he's never shared, because he knows they'll be used against him. Schopenhauer observed that most people aren't defeated by superior arguments. They're defeated by superior manipulation. They lose not because they're wrong, but because they're not skilled in the dark arts of intellectual warfare. And once they learn to expect defeat, they stop fighting entirely. This is the ultimate goal of heuristic dialectic, not just to win individual battles, but to condition your opponents to surrender before the war begins, to make them complicit in their own intellectual subjugation. Felix realizes he's been living in a state of learned helplessness for years, like a lab rat that's been shocked so many times it stops trying to escape even when the cage door is open. He's trained himself to accept manipulation as normal, to expect psychological attacks as inevitable, to view his own thoughts and feelings as inherently suspicious. The manipulators in his life didn't just win arguments. They won something far more valuable. They won his silence. They won his self-doubt. They won his participation in his own mental imprisonment. And the most insidious part? Felix has started using the same tactics on others. When his subordinate challenges one of his decisions, Felix finds himself saying, "I've been doing this longer than you have," deploying trick number 30, false authority. When his mother criticizes his parenting, he responds with, "You did your best with me and I turned out fine." A subtle version of trick number 17, using a dubious result to validate a questionable method. He's become what he fears most, another node in the network of psychological manipulation that keeps everyone confused, defensive, and intellectually isolated. Schopenhauer understood that this system perpetuates itself because those who master heuristic dialectic are rewarded with power, while those who remain honest are systematically destroyed or marginalized. Society doesn't actually want truth seekers. It wants skilled manipulators who can maintain the illusion of reasonableness while advancing their agenda. Felix sits in his car after another defeated conversation with his boss, and the weight of his realization crushes him. He's not just trapped in individual relationships. He's trapped in an entire social system designed to reward psychological predators and punish authentic thinkers. The manipulation isn't a bug in human society. It's a feature. It's how the system maintains itself, how power structures preserve themselves, how the strong keep the weak confused and compliant. Felix sits in his apartment at dawn. Schopenhauer's The Art of Being Right spread across his coffee table like a battle plan. But now he's reading it differently, not as a victim trying to understand his tormentors, but as a warrior learning to fight back. The breakthrough came when he read Schopenhauer's most radical insight. The person who knows the tricks of heuristic dialectic is like someone who knows fencing when attacked by someone who doesn't. The philosopher wasn't just cataloging manipulation tactics. He was creating an immune system against them. Schopenhauer's solution was radical. You must become fluent in the language of manipulation, not to use it, but to defend against it. You must understand the weapons being used against you so you can neutralize them before they destroy your mind. Felix realizes that his entire life strategy has been wrong. He's been trying to be more reasonable, more logical, more fair, but he's been bringing a calculator to a knife fight. While he was perfecting his spreadsheets, his opponents were perfecting their psychological warfare. The first principle of Schopenhauer's liberation protocol: recognition. You cannot defend against what you cannot see. Felix starts carrying a small notebook, documenting every manipulation tactic he encounters. His boss's loaded questions, Sarah's emotional blackmail, his mother's guilt trips. He begins to see the matrix of manipulation with scientific clarity. Within a week, his notebook is full. Trick number 3, generalize your opponent's specific statements. Trick number 11, Use metaphors and analogies to confuse. Trick number 23. Make your opponent angry so they lose their composure. The patterns become obvious once you know what to look for. The second principle, deflection. Don't engage with the manipulation. Expose it. When his boss tries the extension trick again, so you think everyone before you was incompetent, Felix responds calmly, "That's not what I said, and I think you know that. Let's focus on the actual proposal." The boss is stunned. For the first time in years, his psychological weapon has been deflected rather than absorbed. Felix doesn't get angry, doesn't get defensive, doesn't try to prove he's not arrogant. He simply refuses to play the game. "I'm just trying to understand your position," the boss says, deploying trick number 29, false innocence. "No," Felix replies with quiet confidence. "You're trying to reframe my cost-saving proposal as a personal attack on the company. That's not the same thing. Would you like to discuss the actual numbers?" The room goes silent. Felix has done something unprecedented. He's called out the manipulation while remaining completely professional. He's exposed the trick without becoming emotional about it. Schopenhauer believed that those who master this skill become virtually immune to psychological manipulation. They can see the tricks coming from miles away and neutralize them with surgical precision. The third principle, counterattack. Once you've deflected the manipulation, you can turn it back on the manipulator. Not with anger or vindictiveness, but with the cold precision of someone who understands the game better than they do. When Sarah arrives late again and starts her usual routine, "Traffic was impossible, and I'm doing the best I can," Felix doesn't absorb the guilt. Instead, he says, "I understand that traffic can be unpredictable. Going forward, let's build in some buffer time so Emma doesn't have to wait." Sarah tries to escalate. "Are you saying I don't care about Emma's feelings?" Felix recognizes trick number 1, extension. Immediately. "I'm saying exactly what I said. Let's build in buffer time. Would 30 minutes work, or do you need more?" Sarah's manipulation tactics crash against Felix's new psychological armor like waves against a seawall. She can't make him defensive, can't make him angry, can't make him doubt himself. He's learned to separate the manipulation from the person, to address the tactic without attacking the individual. The transformation is remarkable. Within weeks, Felix's relationships begin to shift. The manipulators in his life start to lose their power over him. Some back down and begin interacting more honestly. Others escalate their tactics, revealing their true nature. A few simply avoid him altogether, unconsciously recognizing that their psychological weapons no longer work on him. But Schopenhauer warned of a darker consequence. Once you develop immunity to manipulation, you begin to see how prevalent it is in human society. You realize that most of what passes for normal social interaction is actually sophisticated psychological warfare. You see the manipulation in politics, in media, in advertising, in everyday conversations. Felix finds himself increasingly isolated, not because people don't like him, but because he can no longer participate in the unconscious dance of mutual manipulation that most people call relationships. He's like a sober person at a party full of drunks, technically superior, but profoundly alone. The price of psychological freedom is the loss of comfortable illusions. You can never go back to believing that most arguments are about truth, that most people argue in good faith, that logic and evidence will win the day. You become a stranger in your own culture, fluent in a language of honesty that few others speak. But here's where it gets dangerous. Six months later, Felix stands in his office, watching the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. He's been promoted. His proposals are being implemented. His team respects him. His ex-wife has stopped her manipulation games and now communicates with professional efficiency. His mother has learned that guilt trips no longer work and has started having actual conversations with him. By every external measure, Schopenhauer's system has worked perfectly. But Felix feels something unexpected, a profound emptiness. He's won the game, but in winning, he's discovered something that Schopenhauer only hinted at in his darkest moments. The mastery of heuristic dialectic doesn't just protect you from manipulation. It reveals the terrifying truth about human nature itself. Schopenhauer believed that those who truly understand the art of controversy gain a terrible power, Felix writes in his journal that night. The power to see through every facade, to predict every move, to remain untouchable in a world of psychological warfare. But with this power comes a curse: the inability to experience genuine human connection. Felix thinks about his daughter Emma, now 7. She still looks at him with pure love, uncontaminated by the manipulation tactics she's learning from the adults around her. But Felix finds himself analyzing even her innocent statements, automatically scanning for signs of emerging heuristic patterns. He's becoming hypervigilant, psychologically armored against everyone, including those who pose no threat. The cruel irony is that in learning to protect himself from manipulation, Felix has lost the ability to be vulnerable. And without vulnerability, there can be no authentic intimacy. He's traded psychological safety for emotional isolation. At work, his new subordinates both respect and fear him. They've learned that they can't manipulate him, but they've also learned that he can see through their every psychological move. They're careful around him, professional, but distant. He's gained authority, but lost warmth. Schopenhauer himself faced this paradox. His philosophical insights made him one of history's greatest thinkers, but they also made him profoundly lonely. He understood human nature so clearly that he could barely stand to be around humans. He spent his later years with his dog, finding more genuine companionship in an animal than in his fellow philosophers. Felix begins to understand why Schopenhauer called his work dangerous knowledge. It's not dangerous because it's wrong. It's dangerous because it's too right. It strips away the comfortable illusions that make social life bearable. It reveals the psychological manipulation that underlies most human interactions, making it impossible to participate in the unconscious dance of mutual deception that most people call friendship. But then, something remarkable happens. Felix meets Elena at a philosophy discussion group. She's reading Nietzsche, and when they debate the nature of truth versus power, something extraordinary occurs: an honest dialectic. For the first time in months, Felix encounters someone who argues not to win, but to understand. Someone who changes her mind when presented with better evidence. Someone who admits uncertainty instead of defending her ego. "You're using Schopenhauer's techniques," she observes after watching him deflect another participant's attempt at trick number 38. "But you're not using them to dominate. You're using them to protect the space for real thinking." Felix realizes she's right. The ultimate mastery of heuristic dialectic isn't using it to win. It's using it to create conditions where honest dialectic becomes possible. The techniques become a firewall against manipulation, protecting the sacred space where two minds can genuinely collaborate in the search for truth. With Elena, Felix discovers something Schopenhauer only glimpsed: the possibility of relationships based on radical honesty. Not the brutal honesty that destroys, but the careful honesty that builds. They learn to spot each other's manipulation patterns and gently call them out. They develop a language of authentic disagreement that strengthens rather than threatens their connection. Most people can't handle this level of psychological transparency, Elena tells him one evening. They're too invested in their illusions, too afraid of being truly seen. But for those who can, it's the only way to build something real. Felix thinks about his daughter Emma. He realizes that his greatest gift to her won't be protecting her from manipulation. It will be teaching her to see it clearly while maintaining her capacity for genuine connection. To be psychologically sophisticated without becoming emotionally closed. To understand the game without losing her humanity. Schopenhauer's final lesson isn't about becoming invulnerable. It's about becoming discriminating. Learning to recognize the difference between those who engage in psychological warfare and those who genuinely seek understanding. Building walls against the manipulators while keeping doors open for the truth seekers. The master of heuristic dialectic doesn't use these techniques to control others. They use them to create islands of authenticity in an ocean of manipulation. They become lighthouses, helping other honest souls navigate the treacherous waters of human psychology. Felix looks at his reflection one more time, but now he sees something different. Not a victim, not a warrior, but a guardian. Someone who understands the darkness well enough to protect the light. The dangerous knowledge isn't just about defending yourself. It's about creating space for genuine human connection in a world that has forgotten what that even looks like. Felix's transformation is complete, but his journey is just beginning. He's learned what Schopenhauer spent his life teaching. That psychological freedom isn't about winning arguments. It's about transcending them. It's about seeing through the manipulation while maintaining your capacity for genuine connection. Now you have the same dangerous knowledge. You understand the 38 tricks that people use to manipulate your mind. You know how to recognize them, deflect them, and neutralize them. You can see the invisible war being fought in every conversation, every debate, every interaction where someone wants to dominate rather than understand. But more importantly, you understand the deeper truth. That mastery of these techniques isn't about becoming a better manipulator. It's about becoming immune to manipulation while preserving your ability to connect authentically with those rare souls who genuinely seek truth over victory. The choice is yours. You can use this knowledge to join the ranks of psychological predators, or you can use it to protect the space where honest thinking becomes possible. Schopenhauer gave us the map. Felix found the path. Now, it's your turn to walk it. If this video opened your eyes to the psychological warfare happening all around you, hit that subscribe button and join our community of people committed to intellectual freedom. Share this with someone who needs to see it, someone who's been getting psychologically beaten down and doesn't understand why. And remember, the most dangerous person in any argument isn't the one who's loudest or most aggressive. It's the one who understands the game well enough to refuse to play it. Welcome to your psychological liberation.